Basically, it's their get-out-of-jail-free card. In the commercials, they told you that potentially you might die. Well, the electric vehicle makers are covering their butts by putting in the manual that comes with the vehicle that they advise the pregnant women, those wearing pacemakers, even hearing aids, should seek medical advice before riding in an electric vehicle. So, you know, there's an awareness of the risk, and once again, they're telling you, and it's up to then the individual whether or not they go along with it. So, what have we got in the UK? We've got, obviously, the push for electric vehicles. And I'll be honest with you, I'd be quite relaxed about riding in an electric vehicle for a couple of miles. But would I do the mileage that I do in an electric vehicle? Absolutely not. Even if the technology was such that I could literally plug it in for 2 minutes and get a recharge of the battery, unless I was comfortable about the screening around the components in that electric vehicle, there is no way I will sit in an electric vehicle for more than a couple of minutes. And yet this isn't what's being shared. So, autonomous vehicles need 5G. That's why they're looking at 5G phone masts on the tops of LED streetlights every 100 metres on the entire UK motorway network over the next decade. And then they say 2030, that's the give or take, but that's when I predict will come the switch that nobody with driving a vehicle that requires manual control will be allowed on the motorways. So in the towns, there's a bit of a problem, because towns were in many cases designed by the Victorians, who planted a shed load of trees for all the right reasons. But now these trees are a problem because they get in the way of the 5G frequencies, and this is why the trees are being cut. So which cities have been in the media
Sheffield.
for culling the trees?
Sheffield.
Sheffield? Sheffield, where else?
Exeter.
I can't, sorry.
Exeter.
Exeter, okay, yes.
Swansea.
Swansea, really? Okay.
Cardiff.
Cardiff, okay, so there's a few cities that have been, but the vast majority of you immediately said Sheffield. No surprise there, because certainly Sheffield has had a lot of publicity, and we're going to look at that in a second. Cool. So there's the headline from The Guardian: for the chop, the battle to save Sheffield's trees. And up until almost exactly a year ago, this appeared to be completely separate, independent, and nothing at all to do with 5G. But then we got a breakthrough because an article appeared, in all places, of The Sun, which actually made a reference to the relationship between the trees and 5G. And this is the first time that I'm aware of in the British media that any mainstream article had made this link. And I jumped on it immediately, because the moment something appears in the mainstream media, all of a sudden you reach a bigger audience. Okay, because before it appears in the mainstream media, of course, you reach the enlightened, but you don't reach the wider audience. Now, I will readily admit that I read The Sun and the Mail, well, read is a bit of a stretch perhaps, but I do plough through The Sun and the Mail almost every day, and I read at least, the other papers I read at least once during the course of a week. Why do I read The Sun and the Mail? Because although media circulation, print media circulation, is falling like the proverbial stone, the two largest circulation papers are The Sun and the Mail. But just to put in perspective how quickly they're falling, the combined readership of The Sun and the Mail today is less than the sole readership of The Sun was when David Cameron took office in 2010. Now, I know a lot of people are getting their information from, obviously, the net, but this is a good thing, because research shows that when people start to get their information from multiple sources, they become more critical and more discerning as to what they actually take to be the truth, or certainly the received wisdom. When people get their information from a single source, it is amazing how quickly they effectively simply become programmed by that single source, and they simply regurgitate whatever it is that appears in that print media. But now that they get information, an increasing number of people are getting information from multiple sources, there's more discretion, more discernment, more curiosity, and this is why the establishment is seeking ways to shut down the alternative media and shut down the wider sharing of information. So here we have Sheffield. And Sheffield, as I'm going to show you, is another classic example of a blind. In other words, keep everybody focused on what's going on in Sheffield while we do it everywhere else. So in Sheffield, even though the evidence was in the public domain, and I was speaking at an event in Sheffield in, I think it was October 2017, and I was pointing out that there was they needed to consider the very real probability that the tree culling was directly related to the rollout of 5G. Now at the time, this was before the 16 cities had been announced. And people in the audience were going, oh no, and that's a stretch too far. And I said, well, mark my words, because it will come about that there will be the realisation that this tree culling is related to the rollout of 5G. And after the article appeared in The Sun in March of 2018, basically the activist community in Sheffield effectively split. There was one group that was absolutely determined to protect the trees, but refused to accept that it had anything to do with 5G. And then there were those who were prepared to embrace the bigger picture. And in the end, I had to, I went back to Sheffield and I made the observation. I said, look, for goodness sake, stop arguing with each other. Because ultimately, you're actually trying to achieve the same thing, which is protect the trees. But one group is actually looking beyond just the immediate issue, which is the trees, and looking at what might else be affected. But ultimately, you're all after the same thing. And the establishment loves it when people argue. And if they can find anything to create division, they will. So the onus is on us to recognise and acknowledge what we agree on, and not get bogged down in what we disagree on. Because if we're going to win this, as we'll talk about later on this evening, but if we're going to beat this, then we need people in communities from right across the social, the political, the philosophical, the religious spectrum, because 5G doesn't discriminate in any way, shape or form. It affects everybody. And the establishment are working on the basis that we just can't get our collective act together to address this. So the tree felling in Sheffield, a 25-year, £2.2 billion contract with Amy, a Spanish civil engineering consultancy. The Streets Ahead programme is intended to upgrade the conditions of our city's roads, pavements, streets, lights, bridges, no small feat in a place that was known as Pothole City. So again, looking for reasons why they're doing it. The contract has serious implications for the city's 36,000 roadside trees, which have been in effect privatised until the late 2030s. Amy, a subsidiary of the massive Spanish company Ferrovial, so far removed 5,350 trees, including oaks, elms and limes. Alison Teal, local Green Party councillor, believes she knows why many were chosen. I can only assume that it's because it's a 25-year contract. They're felling mature trees because they are more expensive, they blah, 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 blah. No reference to 5G rollout. From the AME website, here's the clue. Our decision to work with Telefonica UK as our strategic supplier across mobile, fixed voice and managed wireless area network services, wide area network services, means we are able to consolidate suppliers and work with one partner to help transform communications to support our business. Our experience of the transition of these services has been very positive, with no interruption to core businesses, a reduced cost of operation, also gives us a strategic platform to develop our communications technology going forward. That is total corporate bollocks. It basically says everything and nothing. But what it's doing is it's telling you that they're working with Telefonica, and Telefonica in this country is O2. It's about the network. This from last June, the Sunday Times investigation, 110,000 trees have been culled in this country over the last few years, often because they are too expensive to maintain? No, not at all. A Sunday Times investigation using Freedom of Information requests has revealed that Sheffield, where the council has caused uproar by felling about 10% of its tree population, is only the third most prolific city at felling. It is exceeded by Newcastle, where 8,414 trees have been felled, and Edinburgh with 4,435. The figure for Sheffield at the time this article appeared is 3,529. Yeah, I was in Newcastle, of course, with Mark Steele 2 nights ago, and we had a packed room there. And when I asked the people in the room what they knew about Newcastle's tree cutting programme, nothing. Nothing. And there was an audible gasp when we revealed that Newcastle had had 60% more trees felled than Sheffield, but nobody knew about it. So you see how Sheffield was used as the blind? Say, oh, that's all right, it's Sheffield, it's nothing to do with us. This is how it works. So the 16 cities, this was from the UK government website almost exactly 1 year ago. Search begins for a UK 5G city of the future. The government will create a 5G city in a multi-million-pound trial of high-speed connectivity to pave the way for the future rollout of 5G across the UK. Now, this was literally a few days after the article in The Sun about the issue of trees blocking 5G signals. And so at the time I said, well, you can absolutely guarantee that Sheffield is going to be one of those cities. And people went, oh, no, again, that's just rampant conspiracy. And I said, look, I'm just joining the dots here. So, EE to launch 5G connectivity across 16 UK cities. But British Telecom, by the way, have just announced that they want first dibs on these 5G masts. So there's going to be a bit of a battle royal to see who takes control of these masts. But anyway, here it is. Here's the 16 cities that were announced in June of last year, and what a surprise! Sheffield is, of course, right there, as is Newcastle, as is Cardiff, and of course Edinburgh. And every one of those cities has been subjected to massive tree culling. So this is your clue. Anytime the trees are starting to be cut down, particularly in busy commuter roads, because I've told you the prediction for motorways, let me roll that forward to, say, 2040. By 2040, private car ownership will be very close to non-existence. Okay, let me say 2050, give them a bit more time. 2050, we already have a situation where under 25s are not rushing to get a driver's license and are not rushing to purchase vehicles, particularly in the cities because they're using public transport or Uber. And so what's happening is over the next 20 to 25, 30 years, as private car ownership diminishes and it becomes effectively public ownership, because if you want to go somewhere, you simply phone Uber, the car with no driver rocks up at your house, takes you wherever it is that you want to go, and then becomes available, obviously, for the next person that calls. And so you can literally imagine the situation in 25, 30 years where you've got literally these autonomous vehicles effectively either parked up or even roaming the streets, just waiting for the next call. And this will all be done on the basis, of course, because they'll all be electric vehicles, and it'll all be done on the basis of the green energy policy. University of Surrey, the 5G partner that was referred to in the videos with Bournemouth. And I'm not going to take you through the whole report, but you can download this report for yourself. All you need to remember to access this report is Guildford, University of Surrey, 5G and trees. And this will be the top item in your search engine. But for the purpose of tonight, I'm going to take you straight to section 3. The base station deployment and topologies. Mast height at tree level as a limiting factor on reach and reliability. New ways for local authorities to work with mobile network operators offers huge future potential for local communities to benefit from a leap forward in rural coverage. In the past, the priority for planning authorities has been to reduce mobile mast heights so that masts are visually screened by buildings and/or trees, with trees being the highest and most likely obstruction. However, this also screens the RF signal and has defeated the objective of reliable coverage, as illustrated I'll show in a second. The curves plotted in the diagram show how increasing the tree height above the line of sight from the base station further into what is known as the Fresnel zone of the propagation channel will cause substantial diffraction or shadowing loss. To avoid this loss and be outside the Fresnel zone, it is necessary for the tree height to be at least 3 meters less than the base station height. Now, we have this report here, which basically shows the problem that the trees have, and so they need to get the mast above the tree. The installation of phone masts does not require local authority planning permission. It's permitted development. So all a phone company has to do is acquire access rights to the land, and then they can put up a phone mast up to 75 feet in an urban area and up to 85 feet in a rural area without seeking any permissions whatsoever. They simply need to advise the planning officer that they have the permission, prove that they have permission to access this particular plot of land, and then they're going to stick up the phone mast. And on the way here, literally, this afternoon, I got a phone call from a guy who lives in Dudleston in Shropshire to say that they have been successful in preventing a phone mast from being erected because they managed to get the farmer who was about to sign a contract with EE, and they managed to get the farmer to look at the documentation, understand the potential risk to his livestock, and he's backed out of signing that contract. So it just goes to show that, you know, once we can get people to look at the evidence that's in the public domain and look at it critically as opposed to dismissively, and when they realise that there's a potential impact on their lives, whether it's their business or their health, then we've got a real chance of shutting this down. So it can be done. In Totnes, or just outside Totnes, in Dartington in South Devon, this is last year, a phone mast was erected literally adjacent to a primary school. And the parents protested, refused to send their kids to school, and enough of them made the statement that unless their phone mast was removed, they would not put their children back into the school because they regarded it as a carcinogenic hazard to the children. The phone mast is still there, but the community and the school have been assured that it will not be activated. Now, yeah, exactly. So consequently, a monitoring, an EMF monitoring post has been set up by the community to, which they check every day, but it's there to alert them just in case that mast has been switched on. In Gateshead, where of course Mark Steele has been very much on point, alerting the community to the 35,000 LED streetlights that have been installed throughout Gateshead, with a 5G transmitter receiver on the top. And you know, I'm not endorsing this by any stretch of the imagination, I'm simply making the observation, has been reported to me, that an increasing number of these antennae on the top of the lampposts are being broken. I'm not sure how that's happening. And the inspection panels at the front of these LED streetlights are being removed and the cavity being filled with concrete. So, you know, this is, we'll talk more in the second half about community activism, but, you know, ultimately, as I'm sure many of you are aware, Mark Steele, who's been very much on point trying to raise awareness of this, yesterday and today was in court in Newcastle appealing his conviction, which he got for allegedly harassing Gateshead councillors. But the definition of harassment, of course, is asking questions they don't want to answer. And unfortunately, he lost the appeal today, but I was speaking to Mark and his barrister while I was driving here, and they said, Ian, it was a stitch-up. And I said, well, you know, we did actually discuss the prospect that that might be the outcome. And they said, you know, it was almost the case of the 2 days we've had in court was just pantomime, and the verdict was predetermined, because they retired for 20 minutes and came back and read a verdict which took 45 minutes to read. They didn't produce that in a 20-minute recess. So, you know, the 2 days in the court was the pantomime to make it look like justice is being done, but there was no way they were going to allow that conviction to be overturned, because they want to send the message that if you ask the hard questions, then, you know, basically we're going to find a way to shut you down. So, this report from University of Surrey says the full national damage to mobile reach and reliability emerges from the data on UK tree heights plotted in the report. Data is plotted showing the absolute numbers of trees, heights from 0 to 25 metres, while the cumulative blah blah blah. It's basically going on to show you that the tree heights need to be below the level of the phone masts, which are only permitted up to 75 feet in a rural area, in an urban area, 85 feet in an urban area. And any tree that basically exceeds that level and breaches that line of sight as mapped out by Ordnance Survey is a problem. And on the basis that this is going to be rolled out across the country, we're going to see the tree population of the UK totally decimated. Sheffield stepped up to the plate, but I might argue that that worked for the establishment because it gave them the opportunity to keep the focus on Sheffield whilst they're doing this everywhere else. So we've got to stay vigilant, that's for sure. So the health considerations are being questioned, and we're going to take a break now, but before we take the break, I want to show you a short video when we finish with this, because this will be the perfect lead-in. Okay, because this is, if I can, this is a guy called Tom Wheeler. He is the former head of the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. So he's the guy who was responsible under the Obama administration for effectively lobbying on behalf of the industry, telecoms industry. And I just want you to listen to this. It is clipped, so it's a 6-minute extract of his presentation. But just listen to what he says, and you will start to really appreciate the magnitude of the psychopathy with which these individuals operate. And then immediately the video finishes. We'll take a break. We'll take a break for 20 minutes, and then when we come back in the second half, I'm going to show you a couple more videos, and then we're going to talk about how we can get active in terms of resisting this. Because if I didn't think for 1 minute that we could stop it, I wouldn't waste my time being here tonight. I pick my battles very carefully. This is not an easy one by any stretch of the imagination, but I believe it is one that we can, right across the country and indeed across the world, we can win. Anyway, this is going to be, watch this video.
The big game changer is that 5G will use much higher frequency bands than previously thought viable for mobile broadband and other applications. Such millimeter wave signals have physical properties that are both a limitation and a strength. They tend to travel best in narrow and straight lines, and they do not go through physical objects as well. But brilliant engineers have developed new antennas that can aim and amplify signals. Now, to make this work, the 5G build-out is going to be very infrastructure intensive, requiring massive deployment of small cells. I'm confident that the actions will lead to a cornucopia of unanticipated, innovative uses and will generate tens of billions of dollars in economic activity. And that's damn important, because it means that U.S. companies will be the first out of the gate. And that is why 5G is a national priority. And stay out of the way of technological development. Unlike some countries, we do not believe that we should spend the next couple of years studying what 5G should be or how it should operate. The future has a way of inventing itself. Turning innovators loose is far preferable to expecting committees and regulators to define the future. We won't wait for the standards. We're already seeing the industry gearing up to seize this opportunity. Verizon and AT&T tell us they'll begin deploying 5G trials in 2017, and the first commercial deployments they're talking about are expected in 2020. And we're not done. As part of our July 14 action, we also plan to ask for comments on opening up other high-frequency bands. Many of the high-frequency bands that we will make available for 5G currently have some satellite users, as well as some Defense Department applications, or at least the possibility of future satellite and defense users. This means sharing will be required between satellite and terrestrial wireless, an issue that is especially relevant in the 28 gigahertz band. But if anyone tells you that they know the details of what 5G is going to become, run the other way. If something can be connected, it will be connected. Hundreds of billions of microchips connected in products from pill bottles to plant waterers. We must reject the notion that the 5G future will be the sole providence of urban areas. The 5G revolution will touch all corners of our country. A lot more antenna siting decisions by local governments and tightened our shot clock for siting application reviews. America's local governments will play an important role in determining how we fulfill this national priority. You can be sure of only one thing. The biggest Internet of Things application has yet to be imagined. Tens of billions of dollars in economic activity. And that's damn important. Ask a question, we'll start with you. Sir.
You needn't egg me on this one. Moments ago I was attempting to talk to some people who came to attend the meeting and have concerns about radiation and 5G, and one of your security force intervened, told the guy he couldn't show me the t-shirt that he had wished to display at the meeting, forced him to put it away, and confiscated my FCC issued ID. Is this consonant with the discussion that ought to be taking place here, and what's your reaction to this action by your staff?
I've just heard about it for the first time, Todd. I mean, obviously this is an open meeting, you know, and I'm sure that if your credentials have been mistakenly taken, you will get them back. But there is a responsibility for everybody who comes here to behave responsibly. Frontiers Order, the United States becomes the first country in the world to identify and open up vast amounts of high-frequency spectrum for 5G networks and applications. This is the most significant step yet. our BDS proceeding is dealing